In a darkness that knows no mercy, there are secrets that must remain buried. But curiosity leads us to the real horror. If you are ready to face your fears, subscribe now and press the like button. The darkness awaits you. In a remote area, there was an old hospital for the mentally ill, abandoned for decades. Rumors about this place claimed that the tortured souls of the former patients still inhabited it, seeking revenge on anyone who dared to enter its grounds. Despite these warnings, a team of researchers decided to explore the asylum to uncover its secrets. The team consisted of 4 people: Dr. Ethan, the leader known for his passion for investigating abandoned places; Elena, a historian; Leo, a psychologist; and Natalia, the photographer documenting their every step. They arrived at the hospital at sunset, and the old buildings were decrepit and decaying with age. The doors were unhinged, the windows shattered, and weeds had overtaken every corner of the place. Upon entering, they all felt an unnatural coldness seeping into their bones, but they ignored it and continued their mission. As they moved through the narrow corridors, Elena began reading the old inscriptions on the walls. Suddenly, the words began to change before her eyes. The letters twisted and bled dark blood, forming warning phrases like, "Run now," and "The curse will surround you." She felt nauseous, as if something evil was trying to take control of her. As they moved between rooms, Natalia took photos of the place, but the images that appeared on the camera were completely different from what she saw. In the photos, distorted faces appeared in the corners of the rooms, and old patients with empty eyes stared at her, silently screaming for help. The horror grew with every picture she took. In one of the narrow corridors, they heard the sound of footsteps dragging on the floor. They tried to pinpoint the source of the sound, but found themselves facing a long, dark hallway. With each step they took, the hallway seemed to get narrower. Elena felt something moving behind her, and when she turned around, she saw a large shadow rapidly approaching. She couldn't escape as the shadow passed through her, freezing her in place. She felt an intense cold taking over her body, and she saw visions of the former patients being tortured in brutal ways. At that moment, the room around them began to change. The walls dripped with dark blood, and the floor became sticky as if sinking into a sea of blood. Screams and cries of torment filled the air, and invisible figures surrounded them, touching them and slowly dragging them toward the center of the room. They began to hear strange, unintelligible voices, as if whispering through the walls. The voices grew louder and clearer, turning into personal calls for each member of the team, calling them by their names. Natalia, who had been documenting everything with her camera, suddenly stopped filming, her eyes staring into space, as if hearing something the others could not. Leo approached her to check on her, but she turned toward him with a distorted face, as if she was no longer herself. In that moment, Leo heard voices in his head, voices that knew everything about him. These voices mocked him, whispered his hidden secrets, and revealed his past before his eyes. Leo tried to silence them, but he began to feel something pressing down on his skull. He felt a terrible pain in his head, as if an invisible hand was squeezing his mind, trying to tear his consciousness apart. Meanwhile, Dr. Ethan found an old, locked door, behind which a faint sobbing could be heard. He pushed the door with force, and it creaked open with a loud screech that almost deafened him. Inside the room, he saw deformed creatures. These were the spirits of the former patients. Their bodies were twisted, and their faces were disfigured in unimaginable ways. Their eyes were filled with hatred, and their hands reached toward him as if trying to pull him into their world. As the team tried to escape the room, the windows shattered and the doors exploded with an unseen force, revealing deformed creatures emerging from the shadows. These were the trapped souls in the asylum, with decayed bodies and broken limbs, moving slowly but steadily toward them. The spirits sought revenge, and no matter how hard the team tried to flee, the creatures blocked their path, making them feel trapped in an endless nightmare. In a desperate attempt to escape, the team headed toward the exit, but something was chasing them in the shadows. The ground began to shake beneath them, and the walls started to crumble around them. They heard a terrifying sound, a mad laugh echoing everywhere. When they finally reached the sealed entrance, the already dim lights began to fade slowly, and the place was plunged into complete darkness. Suddenly, they heard a horrifying sound emanating from nowhere, a sharp rustling that filled the air. Then, they felt something creeping around them. At that moment, a huge, indistinct figure appeared before them, but its eyes glowed a blood red. The creature was approaching slowly, making a terrifying noise with each step. They tried to run, but the place had become a maze with no way out. The next day, as the morning sun rose, a rescue team arrived at the abandoned asylum after losing contact with the research team. They found the place enveloped in an eerie silence, as if trapped in a heavy quiet that hid dark secrets beneath it. The main entrance was open, but there was no sign of any of the team members. They entered the place cautiously, their lights cutting through the dark shadows that filled the abandoned corridors. There was nothing but cracked walls and empty rooms, but a sense of danger hung over the place. One of the rescue team members noticed that the temperature was unnaturally dropping as they ventured deeper into the asylum, and strange noises began to echo around them, like distant groaning or faint whispers. When they reached the room that the research team had entered the night before, they found the door wide open, and on the floor was Natalia's camera, left as if it had fallen suddenly. They immediately checked its contents, and the last footage showed terrifying and incomprehensible scenes. Strange sounds, distorted faces appearing and disappearing in the darkness, and finally, a blurry image of a giant creature with red eyes. After that, no one dared stay in the abandoned asylum. The place became part of terrifying local legends, and anyone who heard the story avoided going near it. It was said that the spirits of the research team were still trapped there, wandering the shadows forever, doomed to live in never-ending terror, a part of the curse of the place, which would not let anyone who entered leave alive.